This is a huge report, a massive move potentially incoming per an NBA insider as he reveals a blockbuster Magic trade, or at least the framework that could potentially take place for the Orlando Magic. Now, as a hint, as you guys can see on the screen, it is involving two guys who have been cornerstones of this franchise for a long time. That is Cole Anthony and Jonathan Isaac. What exactly could be the return, the haul for those two players, and are they going to potentially package one of the first-round picks that this team has to potentially get a deal done to get a difference maker for the Orlando Magic? This was really interesting news. Definitely wanted to share and make a video on this for you guys. But first, welcome into Magic Digest. I'm your host, Patrick Previty. This is your one-stop shop for Orlando Magic basketball content here on YouTube. Now, 29.2% of you guys are watching these videos and are subscribed, so thank you guys so much for the support. But 70.8% of you are not subscribed, but you are watching the video, so make sure that you hit that subscribe button. It is the easiest and best way to support the channel here at Magic Digest, trying to build and continue to build this Orlando Magic basketball community that we do have on YouTube. Now let's get into the initial report talking about Jonathan Isaac and Cole Anthony. The Magic are reportedly open to packaging both of them, and it could be and/or, with their 2 first-round draft picks to acquire a rotational upgrade. Now this is per Kevin O'Connor. He, I believe, used to be with the Ringer. I think he's now with Yahoo. Maybe I'm getting that flipped, but Orlando is ready to officially go into win now mode in the Eastern Conference. Now that last part, I think we've known that this team is angling towards that. Obviously, this year was supposed to be more of a stepping stone. Didn't turn out that way, mainly due to injuries, but also running into a, at the time, mainly healthy Celtics team, if you will. I know KP was still kind of dealing with some of the stuff, but mainly healthy Celtics team. So that kind of changed everything, but they matched up against them and, you know, now are having to deal with a first-round exit in the next 2 years. But this team is still angling towards that. So this makes sense. What exactly did Kevin O'Connor say? Let's check it out. The Orlando Magic are open to trading both of them. And so now you get to see his exact quote. It's not taken in any sort of way or out of context. Now this is very interesting stuff. Now let's get into Cole Anthony and Jonathan Isaac. In that podcast, they did talk about a potential player, and that was Lauri Markkanen. Now, I don't know if that puts us where that puts us salary cap wise. I do know that Jonathan Isaac has a descending contract. Cole Anthony's getting paid a modest rotational salary for his troubles, but I don't know if that would work for the salary cap. But that is a name that they floated on that podcast. Now, just looking at Cole Anthony and Jonathan Isaac, giving the quick rundown here from their past season, I think everybody's in agreement that Cole Anthony started out the year very poorly, but he has been such an important part of this team for so long that you obviously would hate to see him go. But after that great playing against the Atlanta Hawks, and it seems like he really had turned things around, especially towards the end of the year, even when Jamahl Mosley wasn't always giving him the minutes that maybe some felt like he deserved. He was going to end the season on a positive note and be an impact player going against the Boston Celtics. Unfortunately, he was a terrible matchup against them. I was banging my fist on the table trying to see a little bit more of him in that series, but unfortunately, every time he did hit the court, it was tons of fouls, 10 minutes of play, multiple turnovers, and it just didn't seem like he was a good fit for them. It would have been very interesting to see the Magic play another team in the playoffs outside of the Boston Celtics, and what kind of impact Cole Anthony would have been able to have on a playoff team as a rotational piece. But unfortunately, that's where the season ended. So that's what we know about his season so far. Now with Jonathan Isaac, he's been an impact defensive player. We've talked about this, you know, ad nauseum, it feels like, especially last offseason, that it's really the injuries for him. And with this contract and how it's set up, it seems like the worst as far as the amount that we're paying him is behind us. So he is now only getting paid 15% of the salary cap. That will continue to go down. And he was healthy last year, played over 70 games. And I think that was one of the biggest, or he was probably one of the most reliable players that we had on this team last year. Now, his minutes kind of fluctuated, especially towards the second half of the year, as it did with most of the players in the front court, such as Goga Bitadze. And then you even saw some fluctuation with Wendell Carter Jr.'s minutes going from low 30s to somewhere in the mid 20s. I think Jamahl Mosley was trying to fill things out, but Jonathan Isaac was there and he was healthy for the majority of the season. Do you want to give up those two guys as rotational pieces? I have personally said that in separate trades, I think that is a definite yes. In one trade plus those picks, we better get somebody back in return that is going to help this team and also not put us in a place where we can't have any sort of flexibility, because this team will be a multi-time tax offender in a couple of years if they're not careful with the way that they build this team. But yes, let's get into Lauri Markkanen, what exactly could he potentially provide to this team? Last year, he averaged 19 points per game, 5.9 rebounds. Utah Jazz fans, you're going to have to fill me in a little bit on how this year went, because unfortunately for this team, they were in the lottery competing for that number 1 overall pick, did not get it. What is the direction for the franchise as far as whether or not they want to give up Lauri Markkanen? I know that he's getting paid a fair amount of money right now, and he is good from three-point range, but is he going to be a player that the Magic would be able to pair with Paolo Banchero, Franz Wagner, Jalen Suggs, and feel like they can actually make it out of the Eastern Conference? I'm a little bit bullish on that. I don't know if that's going to be enough. He obviously, the stats would be a great replacement in the starting lineup, whether or not you replace Wendell Carter Jr. or what have you, however you want to do it and form these lineups. But I do question a little bit about whether or not he can put this team over the top. And it's not a name that we've talked about a ton in the offseason. If we want to compare some of the guys that we are giving up, I get it. The production really isn't there for Jonathan Isaac on the offensive end. But the defense that we would be missing without the minister of defense in this organization and on this roster would definitely be apparent if we were only getting Lauri Markkanen back. But obviously the offense would be definitely a plus. He's averaging more points than both of these players combined, and both of these players, I definitely think, while they haven't been as productive as you might want to try to start a rebuild for, they're definitely players that are cheaper, and I think as far as trying to rebuild, could be guys that you could potentially get off of as well. So you can end up repackaging these two guys if they end up playing well. Cole Anthony, I definitely think, is a good veteran guard, too, for a young team, as we have seen with the Orlando Magic. I don't think that he takes away minutes from Anthony Black. I just think Jamahl Mosley doesn't give Anthony Black any minutes, as far as if you do think he deserves more minutes in that case, right? But I don't think it's because Cole Anthony's some sort of Russell Westbrook type, right, where the coaches trusted him too much. It's been the exact opposite. But another thing I wanted to float out, too, was also the fact that I saw on Orlando Magic SI, and it was written that this could potentially also be for somebody like Cam Johnson. And that's a player that we have talked about as well on this channel. And I definitely think that that's a name to bring up. Now, does Cam Johnson bring us over the hump in the same manner that Lauri Markkanen maybe doesn't as well? Probably. They're probably in the same boat. But we know that Cam Johnson's unbelievable from three-point range, shooting almost 40% and 47.5% from the floor, 19 points. And he does fit the archetype closer to Paolo Banchero and Franz Wagner, so that could be an issue, and that's one of his own negatives. But I definitely think from the offensive side of things, and even on a Nets team that was also kind of struggling last year, that he could also be more of a net positive. I just think his game fits more, and I think that kind of wing-heavy, small ball-ish kind of lineup is something that would definitely work and something I'd like to see. Now, if you do end up trading for Cam Johnson, is there a way where we could potentially keep Jonathan Isaac? Because I definitely think defensively this team would suffer and would need some of that flexibility, at least coming off of the bench, and some of those different options to be able to handle a roster that's got three guys who are 6'8", 6'9", and then you've got your smaller point guard, and then you've got Wendell Carter Jr. maybe on the floor. Definitely would be an odd fit, and something that I remember bringing up to you guys before, and then a lot of you guys saying definite no's because of his size and where he plays on the court. Definitely think you could slot any of those guys from the 2 to the 4 position, or maybe even a small ball 5. Now that gets into a different sort of conversation, but I think it's very interesting. But let me know what you guys think in the comments section down below. If this team packages those two guys plus one of the picks, do you think you would do that deal for Cam Johnson or Lauri Markkanen? I would say that's a hold. I think that's a maybe we'll revisit kind of trade. I don't think that those guys are extremely valuable on their own that we would be giving up. I just think it might be too much to give up in one trade. But the salary cap situation does also work for Anthony Simons, so maybe that's also something that we got to play with. That's probably the number one out of all of these guys that we've talked about so far in this offseason. But yes, of course, let me know what you guys think down below. And as always, I'll see you guys next time with more Orlando Magic basketball content.